Absolute madness. In the women's flyweight division, we have the Mexican-Canadian Lupita Godinez, and it might seem like I just said her name, a week ago? Yeah, she is going to become the first fighter in UFC history to compete 7 days apart from one another in the octagon. I saw the tweet out there from, and I want to make sure I get his handle right, at MMA Adam Martin. You know him as, fellow Canadian Adam Martin. He was the one that tweeted it out there. That's how I saw it. Khamzat Chimaev was 10 days apart when he fought in quick succession. But Matt, when I look at a fight like this for Godinez, you can see that I highlighted their previous weigh-ins for both of these women, because for Godinez, last week she took on Silvana Gomez-Juarez, and I mean, it was an absolute drubbing. We'll talk about that a little bit later on, but to get to the weight, she weighed in at 115.5. Luana Carolina, her last time out, 128.5. And Matt, we talked about Luana Carolina, who was supposed to be competing this weekend against one Sijara Eubanks. And the majority of the video, if we can make Cole's notes for it, it's pretty much that Sijara Eubanks has had a bizarro career than what she really should have had in the octagon.
It really was. Like, of all the careers Sijara Eubanks could have had, this is the worst version of it. And it does suck because...
it gets worse.
Oh, yes. Because, hey, she was at least supposed to fight this weekend when we made that original prediction show. And we don't really know what's happening to Sarge now. And it just really is unfortunate because every time it feels like she does have a big opportunity, or she is starting to gain a little bit of momentum, something happens. Whether that's a loss, whether it's her missing weight, whether it's a fight getting canceled, just something always seems to happen that keeps her from just, fighting and having a consistent schedule. And it really sucks because I think my one big MMA hot take that I'm going to take to my grave is that if Sijara Eubanks could make the weight easily and just never get injured, she might have been champion at some point. And it's just wild that we were talking about a fighter who, at their apex, is championship material. Like, their prime is at least an all-star caliber player. And now we're talking about someone who can barely show up to fight. We don't know what weight class they belong in. It's been a weird run for old Sijara Eubanks.
Everything and all-encompassing, it felt sad to me because when I found out that this fight was announced, I went on to Instagram, I checked Sijara Eubanks' Instagram. She was excited for the fight. Her last post on her IG story was about her showing up to the airport in Vegas to get ready. And then I saw, COVID protocols, she's out. So obviously, things that are outside of her control. But we ultimately get this fight, Matt. Luana Carolina is something that we've really talked about a lot. A very well-schooled Muay Thai artist. She was a 2-time state champion and a 2-time national champion in the sport in her home country of Brazil. She's going to have a large height and reach advantage in this fight, taking on the smaller Lupita Godinez. But Matt, we talked about it. When you look at Lupita Godinez's overall stats, I mean, her last fight out, she outstruck Silvana Gomez-Juarez, a very, very good striker, especially on the feet. 18-3. She got 5 of her total 6 takedown attempts. It was an absolute drubbing. And I remember sending you a text when I was watching the fight going, yeah, well, this is the Loopy I expected in the UFC. And if you didn't catch on and if you didn't watch the breakdown from last weekend, we were very critical of the fact that Godinez, she definitely didn't look good in her debut against Jessica Penne. I thought she won. I'd say 95% of the people in the world on planet Earth thought that she won her fight against Penne. But there were obviously extenuating circumstances as to why the performance wasn't quite up to par with what we'd seen Godinez kind of be able to strive for outside of the UFC. She had COVID a couple of weeks before. It was a nasty bout with it. And ultimately, we got a relatively depleted fighter. But Godinez is one of those people that's out there, and you might have missed this. Maybe it was an afterthought. Right after she had that fight against Jessica Penne, she accepted a fight against Sarah Alpar. And it was kind of crazy to think, hey, that fight would take place at bantamweight. You think Godinez is small at flyweight? She's willing to fight anybody, anywhere, any place. Could be on the street. Could be on the strip. I don't know what it is. But for one of these women, it's going to be like my record that I have. It's a Summertime Dream by Gordon Lightfoot, Canadian hero, Matt. Could be the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald here, because either it's embarrassment for Carolina to lose at her own weight class, or Godinez kind of loses a little bit of height, but maybe not so much moving up a weight class on such short notice. Off a giant performance bonus of a great event her last time out.
Hide your excitement a little bit better, Craig. Okay, this is the problem with Lupita Godinez, and these are the first 2 things that I thought of when you had first initially texted me, hey, she's taking another fight only a week after her first one. What are the first things we always think of when a fighter has a quick turnaround? It's how much damage did they take in their first fight, and what was kind of the rhythm of the fight? You know, like, was it a fight of the night? Did it get over quick? The good news for Lupita Godinez is that she didn't take any damage in her last fight only a week ago. And she looked great doing it. Like, there's not really any negatives to take from that performance. But if we're going to bring up a lot of excuses for why she didn't look great in the Jessica Penne fight, I just don't think Gomez Juarez is like a UFC caliber fighter.
You're an idiot. You said she was a week ago.
Craig, she's the 37-year-old strawweight on a week's notice. All I'm saying is that with Lupita Godinez, this is the fight that I will get on board if she's able to win. Because I don't even think she's that big physically for strawweight. And that's why it's going to be so interesting to see what she looks like at flyweight. Because like you had mentioned against Alpar, okay, skill-wise, she probably would have beaten Alpar at bantamweight, but still, that's a big step up going from strawweight to bantamweight. Jessica Andrade is a fighter who fought and kind of did the opposite, and people thought she was crazy for it, so the fact that Godinez is doing it in reverse is just as courageous, don't get me wrong. I'm just a little worried about the size in this fight, and that's really the only thing I'm concerned with, because Lupita Godinez can kind of employ a similar game plan to what we thought Sijara Eubanks was going to do. She can mix in her striking, she can use her wrestling, and she can keep a really high pace, which were sort of the three keys to this fight for Sijara Eubanks. And if Lupita Godinez can go in there and think, hey, I can just build off what I did last week. I know what I've been working on has been working, and I know that what I've been working on in the gym actually translates into the cage. I think if Godinez does, you hate to say the same thing, because of course the exact same game plan won't work, but I think if she can keep up her aggression, sort of crowd the space of Luana Carolina, and go for takedowns, I really think this is going to be a simple fight for her on a week's notice.
Well, the funniest thing about this one is for Carolina, you're training for a wrestler. Godinez can definitely get it done on the feet. We've seen that. If you go back through her overall body of work, the fight against Vanessa Demopoulos, she was able to keep the majority of it up on the feet. When she fought Lindsay Garbat back with BTC, she boxed her up on the feet. So when I focus on this one, Carolina's getting ready for a wrestler. Godinez, you know, she's well schooled in her wrestling. And then if you flip it, well, Godinez was getting ready for a striker in Gomez Juarez. Now you get Carolina, who's a lot bigger. Obviously, we talked about that and kind of really feeding a fed horse at this point. But Matt, when I look at the odds for this one, I was a little bit surprised. I think, again, a little bit of shine because Godinez got it done so quick and she won a performance bonus. All three of the bonuses that they gave out were all to female fighters. That was great to see. Something that you never see. But for Godinez, she opened minus 285. She's minus 265 right now as we speak. This is Wednesday night. For Carolina, she opened a plus 225. She's plus 215. If we have a look at the Topology votes, Matt, it is going to be a surprise to me as it is to you. What are you thinking? Over, under? I'm going to go 80% Godinez. What are you saying?
I'm thinking 65 Godinez, but I do think she'll have the majority.
Yeah, look at that. 557 votes, so it's a slim amount. 87% Godinez, 60% by decision. For the 13% that have Carolina, 91% by decision. To me, I've seen Luana Carolina struggle with fighters taking her down. And it's not just her last fight. It's been a little bit of a trend if you go back through her career body of work. But if we do just focus on her last fight, Poliana Botelho is a big fighter at flyweight. She was able to pretty well 10-8 her in the first round. I know it's something that I harped on when we talked Eubanks and Carolina. It's something that I'll mention here too. If you look at the total strikes in that fight, they weren't even close. I actually have them right here in front of me. 36-2 were the strikes for Botelho. She went 1-1 for takedowns and had control for 2.5 minutes. 2:26 is what it exactly was. Should have been a 10-8. Round 2, 10-9. It was Carolina keeping it on the feet. Round 3, the same thing. I had it a draw, but the judges in that fight, there was a 28-28, 229-28. So that's how Carolina gets that win. For me, when I look at this fight, can Godinez do that in the first round? Can she do it in the second round? And then the third round's gravy? In this instance, I have a hard time. It's really tricky.
No, you don't, Craig. You think Godinez is going to win. Just come out and say it. Not every fight's going to be razor close in a split decision. This is the thing. Godinez has all the X factors to sort of deal with the strengths of Luana Carolina. Because let's think of the perfect fight for Carolina. She has to keep it at range, mix in her power punches with her kicks, and just sort of rinse and repeat that same strategy. What Lupita Godinez is really good at is she can A, crowd the space to where you can't really get the extension on your power shots, which is what Carolina's going to have to do, or just mix in her wrestling enough to not just become a total wrestler, because that's not what Godinez does. Make it an MMA fight, because I really do think that if you are a good mixed martial artist and you are a well-rounded fighter, which Godinez is, I think that's enough to beat somebody like Carolina, although I do worry about the size. Again, I know Lupita was willing to move up to bantamweight, which is crazy to think about, because I honestly think, like, sizing her up, I think she's probably in the bottom half, like, frame-wise for strawweights. Like, Marina Rodriguez is a strawweight, for instance. Marina Rodriguez is a whole lot bigger than Lupita Godinez, so...
Yeah, Godinez is in that Jinyu Fry, Kay Hansen, good smaller strawweights that are out there, but I definitely agree with you, and when I look at this fight, I think Godinez will be able to get the win, but I wouldn't be surprised, and I want to hear from everybody in the comments section down below. Let's get your picks on this one. Do you think Carolina's going to be able to get it done with that size and physicality? Is Lupita Godinez going to go on this Khamzat Chimaev run of 2 different divisions? I can't wait for this fight coming up this weekend. So let us know your picks and predictions down below in the comments section. Make sure you check out the rest of the content with Fight Night Picks this week. John Franklin's going to be live at Bellator 268. You can find us at Fight League Atlantic 2. You can find us there, Moncton, New Brunswick, Canada. Can't wait for it. We'll be calling fights, having all sorts of stuff at FightNightPicks.com. So keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. And as we always say, let's get into it.